Imagine a world where the maps are all filled in, yet the shadows still hold secrets that defy every law of modern biology. We like to believe that we have conquered the wild, documenting every leaf and counting every grain of sand on our pale blue dot. But in the heart of the Gobi Desert, a legend persists of a creature so alien it feels like a visitor from another dimension. This is the Olgoi Korkoi, the Mongolian Deathworm, a nightmare of red flesh said to dwell beneath the shifting, silent dunes of Central Asia. For centuries, nomadic tribes have spoken of a thick, sausage-like entity that brings instant death to anything it touches with a single spark. It is described as being 2 feet long, lacking eyes or a mouth, and capable of spitting corrosive acid that melts solid metal. To the people of the Gobi, this isn't a campfire story or a movie monster, but a terrifying reality of the desert's most isolated corners. Why are we so obsessed with the idea of monsters hiding just out of sight, even in an age of satellites and thermal imaging? Perhaps it is because our brains are wired to fear the unknown, a survival instinct left over from a time when we weren't the apex predators. The mystery of the deathworm first reached Western ears through the explorer Roy Chapman Andrews, a man who hunted dinosaurs and chased legends. In 1922, during his Central Asiatic expeditions, Andrews heard whispers of the intestine worm from high-ranking Mongolian officials who feared its very name. They claimed it lived in the most desolate regions, emerging only during the wettest months of June and July to hunt on the surface. While Andrews remained a skeptic, his documentation of these stories transformed a local oral tradition into a global scientific curiosity for the next century. Since then, dozens of expeditions from the Czech Republic to Great Britain have descended upon the desert, armed with cameras and high-tech sensors. These explorers, like Ivan Makel, risked their lives in the blistering heat, searching for a biological anomaly that should not theoretically exist. They used thumpers to vibrate the sand and even small aircraft to scan the vast, golden waves of the Gobi for any sign of movement. But the desert is a master of illusions, playing tricks with light and sound that can make a simple shadow look like a titan. Every footprint found turned out to be the wind, and every dark shape vanished into the heat haze before it could ever be confirmed. If this creature is real, it represents a profound gap in our understanding of how life can adapt to the harshest environments on Earth. To find the truth, we must peel back the layers of myth and look at the Gobi through the cold, objective lens of science. To understand why the Mongolian deathworm captures our imagination, we must first look at the environment that supposedly birthed it. The Gobi is not just a desert, it is a sprawling, prehistoric graveyard, where the winds constantly reveal the bones of giants long dead. In this 1.3 million square kilometer expanse, the line between ancient fossils and living myths becomes incredibly thin and blurry. Biologically, the worm presents a massive puzzle. How does a soft-bodied creature survive in a place where water is a luxury? Most worms are annelids, requiring constant moisture to breathe through their skin, making a desert a literal death trap for them. But worm is often a linguistic catch-all. In Mongolian, the term can refer to any dangerous, slithering creature, including snakes and lizards. This opens the door to more plausible candidates, such as the Tatar sand boa, a real inhabitant of these golden dunes. The sand boa is thick, blunt-tailed, and spends its life buried in the sand, remarkably resembling the sausage description from the legends. Yet, the sand boa doesn't spit acid, and it certainly doesn't discharge high-voltage electricity to stun its unsuspecting prey. Some scientists suggest we might be looking at a specialized species of worm lizard, or Amphisbaena, which has evolved to live underground. These legless reptiles are masters of the subterranean world, but none known to science possess the lethal chemical weaponry of the myth. Then there is the matter of the electrical attacks, a trait almost exclusively reserved for aquatic life like the electric eel. On land, air acts as an insulator, meaning a creature would need a massive internal battery to jump a spark through the desert air. This would require a biological complexity that has never been observed in any terrestrial organism in the history of evolution. Does this mean the deathworm is a total impossibility, or is it a misunderstood encounter with a very real, very dangerous snake? Consider the spitting cobra. It can launch venom with pinpoint accuracy, causing blindness and intense pain from a safe distance. To a terrified traveler in the 13th century, a localized snake strike might easily be embellished into a tale of supernatural acid. We must also consider the psychological phenomenon of pareidolia, where our brains force patterns onto random shapes in the landscape. In the shimmering heat of the Gobi, a rolling piece of dry scrub or a sun-bleached bone can transform into a monster. To solve the mystery, we have to separate the biological reality from the echoes of ancient folklore and the tricks of the light. If the deathworm remains elusive, perhaps it is because the Gobi offers other, more tangible wonders that boggle the mind. Beneath the very sand where the worm supposedly hunts lies a treasure trove of evolution that changed science forever. This is the site of the world's first discovery of dinosaur eggs, proving that the terrible lizards were, in fact, parents. Over 80 different dinosaur groups have been unearthed here, from bird-like predators to massive herbivores that once shook the earth. 71 million years ago, this arid wasteland was a lush ecosystem, home to creatures that look more fantastical than any cryptid. If we can find the delicate remains of a prehistoric egg, why has no one found a single bone of a megaworm? Biology dictates that a 2-foot-long predator would leave a significant ecological footprint, yet the fossil record remains silent on its existence. But the Gobi doesn't need monsters to be eerie. It has its own voice, a haunting melody known as the singing sands. Early travelers, including Marco Polo, described hearing the voices of spirits and the rhythmic thumping of drums across the dunes. For centuries, these sounds were attributed to ghosts or underground demons, fueling the terror of those who dared to cross. Modern physics has finally unmasked the ghost, revealing a beautiful interaction between friction, grain size, and moisture. When sand avalanches occur, the friction between specific, well-rounded grains creates a low-frequency hum that can reach 105 decibels. The internal structure of the dune acts as a natural amplifier, a giant sand-built speaker bouncing sound waves into the air. This booming can last for several minutes, sounding like a low-flying plane or a deep, unsettling chant from the earth itself. It is easy to see how a lonely traveler, hearing the desert scream, might imagine a giant beast lurking just beneath. The rhythmic pounding sounds that explorers try to simulate with their thumpers are actually a natural part of the Gobi's geology. This creates a feedback loop of myth. We hear a sound, we invent a monster, and then we go looking for it. Our search for the deathworm reveals more about the human psyche than it does about the biodiversity of Central Asia. We are a species of storytellers, and we have a deep-seated need to populate the empty spaces of our world with magic. But as we shine the light of inquiry into these dark corners, the magic doesn't disappear, it simply changes its form. As we venture deeper into the 21st century, the shadows of the Gobi are being pushed back by the relentless march of data. Satellite imagery can now spot a single vehicle in the middle of the wasteland, yet the deathworm remains a phantom. If a 6-foot predator truly existed, it would require a stable population and a food source that we have yet to identify. Thermodynamics and ecology suggest that such a specialist would leave genetic traces eDNA in the very soil it inhabits. Future expeditions might not carry shovels or thumpers, but portable sequencers to hunt for the worm's code in the dust. Until that code is found, the Olgoi Khorkhoi lives in the fertile middle ground between biological possibility and cultural necessity. It serves as a reminder that despite our high-definition world, we still crave the existence of the unexplained. These legends are the immune system of our curiosity, protecting us from the boredom of a fully mapped and understood planet. If we ever prove the worm is just a misidentified snake or a trick of the singing sands, will we be relieved or disappointed? The Gobi remains a place where the earth can sing and where dragons once guarded their nests in the red cliffs. Perhaps the monster isn't a creature of flesh and blood at all, but a personification of the desert's lethal power. It is the heat that wilts the mind, the lack of water that stops the heart, and the electricity of a sudden storm. We give these dangers a face and a name so that we can imagine ourselves brave enough to face them and win. Whether it is a legless lizard, a cryptic snake, or a collective hallucination, the deathworm has already achieved immortality. It has inspired explorers to cross continents and scientists to look closer at the world than they ever would have otherwise. In that sense, the Olgoi Khorkhoi is very much real, as a catalyst for human discovery and a symbol of nature's endurance. Our planet is a complex tapestry of things we know. things we think we know, and things we can only dream of. As long as there are empty spaces on the map, there will be room for the monsters that keep us looking over our shoulders. So, the next time you hear a low rumble coming from the ground beneath your feet, don't be afraid to wonder, because the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious, and the Gobi has plenty of it left to share.